All right, let's dive right into high profit prospecting. We've got your notes and research from Mark Hunter's book right here. And we've got an expert here to help us kind of break it all down. So are you ready to really figure out how to turn prospects into customers
Absolutely.
and profitable ones at that?
Yeah,
But
that's the key, right? Profitable customer.
because this book tackles some pretty common prospecting myths right off the bat. Like the whole idea that cold calling is dead. So is that really true?
It's funny, right? In today's digital age, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. The reality is, phone calls are far from dead, especially if you know how to use them strategically. I mean, think about it. In a world that's dominated by emails and social media and all these things, a well-timed phone call can really stand out.
Yeah, I can see that. But I mean, so many people are just so wary of answering calls from numbers they don't know. Wouldn't it just be easier to focus on digital outreach instead?
Well, yeah, you're right. People are definitely bombarded with calls these days. But that's why a targeted approach is key. The book actually suggests focusing on early morning calls. Before your prospects' days get too hectic, you could even use a script. Something like, "Hi, prospect's name. This is your name from your company. I'm calling because I see that prospect's company is doing some really great work in prospect's industry. I have an idea that I think could help you briefly state a benefit. And I just wanted to see if you might have a few minutes to chat this week."
Oh, that's great. I love how concise and compelling that script is. I can definitely see how that would be much more effective than just like a generic sales pitch. So what about those times when you do reach voicemail, though? Any tips for leaving a message that actually gets a call back?
Yeah, actually, the book suggests kind of a surprising tactic here. Create intrigue by not leaving your website address or proposing any specific callback times. You might say something like, "Hi, prospect name. I just wanted to share a quick thought about how your company could potentially help prospect's company achieve specific goal. Give me a ring back when you have a moment and we can explore it further."
Interesting. So it's almost like a cliffhanger. You're piquing their curiosity and making them want to call you back to find out more.
Yeah, exactly. Now, before we move on from phone calls, I do want to touch on another myth that the book debunks. That you only need to focus on prospecting when your business is slow.
Oh, right, right. I remember reading about that sales manager, Dennis, who learned that lesson the hard way.
Oh yeah, Dennis's story is a great example of why consistent prospecting is so important, even when things are going well. His team was riding high, they had this booming period, and they just totally neglected prospecting. But then when the market shifted, they were caught flat-footed.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's like saving for a rainy day. You might not need it right now, but you'll be glad you have it when the unexpected happens. So consistent prospecting, it's essential, regardless of market conditions. Okay, so then what about defining a prospect? Is it just anyone you have contact info for?
That's where I think a lot of people go wrong. The book really emphasizes the importance of qualifying your leads to determine who's actually a good fit for your product or service. A prospect is someone who not only has a need for what you're selling, but they also have the authority and the budget to make a purchase. Otherwise, you're just wasting time and energy chasing dead ends.
Right. It's about focusing on quality over quantity. And speaking of time, the book really hammers home the point that time is a salesperson's most valuable asset.
Oh, absolutely. It cautions against what it calls the prospecting telethon approach, where you're just frantically dialing numbers hoping for the best, and that kind of random outreach is rarely effective. And it can be incredibly draining.
Yeah, no kidding. So instead of a telethon, what does the book recommend?
It suggests scheduling dedicated blocks of time for prospecting and sticking to them religiously. Having this kind of structured approach allows you to be more focused and intentional with your outreach.
Right, and that ties back to our previous point about qualifying leads. By focusing on the right prospects, you're making the most of your time. And you're increasing your chances of success. Now we've covered phone calls. But what about email? Is that still relevant in the age of instant messaging and social media?
Email remains a really vital tool for prospecting. But just like phone calls, it needs to be used strategically. The book advises crafting short, benefit-oriented emails that are easy to digest on a mobile device, because that's how most people are checking their inboxes these days.
Right, so no more lengthy emails with walls of text.
No, concise and impactful is the name of the game. Think about what would grab your attention in a crowded inbox. Your subject line should be compelling. The message should quickly highlight the key benefits for the recipient. You might try something like, "Subject, prospect name, increase your metric by percentage with your solution."
Oh, yeah. That's much more likely to get open than a generic introducing your company email.
Oh, absolutely. And then once you've got their attention, you can provide a bit more detail about how your solution can address their specific needs. But always remember to keep it concise and focus on the value that you're offering.
Okay, so phone calls and emails are covered. What about referrals? Are those still a valuable source of leads in today's digital world?
Oh, absolutely. The book highlights referrals as one of the most efficient ways to gain new high-value customers
Yeah.
because they come with a built-in level of trust. They're coming from someone your prospect already knows and respects.
Right, that makes sense. But how do you actually go about getting those referrals? Do you just casually mention it to your existing customers and hope for the best?
The book actually outlines a 4-step process for maximizing referral development. First, ask for referrals at the right time, ideally when a customer expresses satisfaction. Second, connect with the referral promptly and personally. Third, keep the referrer in the loop about your progress with the referral. And finally, always express gratitude to the referrer, regardless of the outcome.
That sounds like a solid system. And I imagine those referrals are usually much warmer leads than someone you've cold called or emailed out of the blue.
You're right. Referrals often convert at a much higher rate because they're coming from a trusted source.
Yeah.
And as the book points out, securing a referral can also strengthen your relationship with the referring customer, making them even more loyal to your business.
Yeah, it's a win-win situation. Now, we can't talk about prospecting without addressing the elephant in the room. Social media, it's such a dominant force in today's world. But how effective is it really for generating leads?
Well, social media definitely has potential for prospecting. But the book offers kind of a cautionary perspective here. Don't get sucked into the time-consuming vortex of aimlessly scrolling and posting without a clear strategy.
So it's not enough to just have a presence on social media. You need to be intentional about how you're using it.
Exactly. The book encourages salespeople to ask themselves some key questions before they dive headfirst into social media prospecting. Like, does your target audience actually spend time on the platform? Can you engage in meaningful conversations rather than just broadcasting messages? And can you track your return on investment for the time you're investing? If you can answer yes to these questions, then social media can be a really valuable addition to your prospecting toolbox.
Yeah, I see your point. It's about being strategic and aligning your social media efforts with your overall prospecting goals. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here. Phone calls, emails, referrals, social media. Seems like there are a lot of different approaches to prospecting. So how do you know which one is right for you?
Well, that's where the book's emphasis on tailoring your approach comes in. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. The best approach will depend on your industry, your target market, and your personal strengths.
So it's not about finding the right approach. It's about finding the right approach for you.
Precisely. Some salespeople excel at building rapport over the phone, while others are masters of crafting persuasive emails. The key is to identify your strengths and leverage the channels that feel the most natural and effective for you.
Yeah, and I imagine that might even evolve over time as you gain experience and experiment with different approaches.
Oh, absolutely. The book encourages salespeople to be adaptable and to constantly refine their strategies based on their results. What works today might not work tomorrow, so you need to be willing to adjust your approach as needed.
Yeah, that's a great reminder for all of us. Never stop learning and growing. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about qualifying leads. So once you've generated a list of potential prospects, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff? How do you determine who is truly qualified to buy from you?
Well, that's a crucial step in the prospecting process, and the book offers some helpful insights for identifying those golden nuggets. One key indicator is whether the prospect has shared a specific timeline for making a decision. If they're vague and non-committal about timing, it might be a sign that they're not really serious about buying.
Right. If someone's truly interested in solving a problem, they usually have a sense of urgency about it.
Exactly. Another indicator is whether the prospect has disclosed proprietary information or insights about their business. This suggests that they trust you and they're willing to open up about their challenges.
I see what you mean. They're not just kicking tires. They're genuinely engaging with you and seeking a solution.
Precisely. And finally, pay attention to their willingness to meet in person or participate in a more in-depth conversation. If they're consistently dodging your calls or rescheduling meetings, it might be a sign that they're not fully invested in the process.
Okay, so those are some red flags to watch out for. But what about the flip side? What are some green flags that indicate a prospect is worth pursuing?
Well, one of the biggest green flags is a clear articulation of their needs and their goals. If they can clearly explain what they're struggling with and what they hope to achieve, it shows that they've put some thought into it. And they're serious about finding a solution.
Right. They've done their homework.
Yeah.
And they're ready to engage in a meaningful conversation.
Right. Another positive sign is their responsiveness to your communication. If they reply to your emails promptly, answer your calls, actively participate in discussions, it suggests that they're engaged and interested in what you have to offer.
So they're not just going through the motions, they're genuinely interested in learning more about your solution.
Exactly. And finally, pay attention to their budget and decision-making authority. If they have the financial resources and the power to make a purchase, it's a strong indicator that they're a qualified prospect worth pursuing.
Right. It's all about focusing on those prospects who have the need, the budget, and the authority to buy from you. But what about dealing with competition? It seems like every industry is so saturated these days. How do you stand out from the crowd and convince prospects to choose you over your competitors?
That's where the book's emphasis on value differentiation comes in. It's not about bad-mouthing your competitors or trying to win a price war. It's about showcasing the unique value that you offer and how you can help prospects achieve their specific goals better than anyone else.
So it's about highlighting your strengths and positioning yourself as the best solution for their needs.
Exactly. The book suggests developing a clear and concise value statement. That summarizes the key benefits you offer and how you differentiate yourself from the competition. So, for example, instead of just saying, "We provide IT solutions," you might say, "We help businesses streamline their IT operations, reduce costs, and improve security."
That's much more compelling, and it speaks directly to the value you're providing. But how do you convey that value effectively to your prospects? Is it all about slick presentations and fancy marketing materials?
While those things can play a role, the book really emphasizes the importance of genuine human connection. It's about building relationships, listening to your prospects' needs, and demonstrating a sincere desire to help them succeed.
So it's not just about selling, it's about building trust and establishing a genuine partnership.
Precisely. And that ties back to the book's overall message of focusing on long-term relationships rather than short-term transactions. By genuinely caring about your prospects and their success, you'll not only close more deals, but you'll also build a loyal customer base that will continue to generate revenue for years to come.
That's a great reminder for all of us. It's not just about making a quick sale. It's about building lasting relationships that benefit both parties. Now, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've tackled some common prospecting myths, we've explored the importance of qualifying leads, and we've discussed various approaches for reaching out to prospects. But there's still so much more to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into specific strategies for maximizing your effectiveness with phone calls, emails, and social media, as well as explore the psychology of selling and the importance of confidence. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to your deep dive on high-profit prospecting. Let's pick up where we left off and refine those strategies even further.
Yeah, sounds good to me. In the last part, we talked about how crucial it is to really tailor your approach based on your strengths and the specific prospect you're targeting. Like, it's not a one-size-fits-all game, right?
Exactly.
But how do we actually do that? Where do we even start?
Well, that's where segmentation comes in. The book suggests dividing your prospects into broader customer types. So you might group them by industry, company size, or even their buying process. For example, your approach to a small business owner is going to be very different from how you'd connect with someone at like a Fortune 500 company.
Right, that makes sense. And wouldn't the type of product or service you're selling also kind of play a role? Like a one-time purchase versus an ongoing subscription?
Oh, absolutely. The length of the sales cycle also matters. If you're dealing with a complex sale, that involves multiple stakeholders. You might need a multi-pronged approach that targets different individuals within the organization. It's all about understanding those nuances of each prospect type.
Okay, so once you've segmented your prospects, then what? Do you create a separate strategy for each group?
Yes. And the book actually takes it a step further. It suggests tailoring your plan, even down to the individual level within those groups, because each prospect is unique, and a personalized approach can really make all the difference.
Wow, I'm starting to see how much deeper this goes than just blasting out generic messages to everyone. But how do you personalize things when you might be dealing with hundreds of prospects?
Well, it's not about crafting a completely unique strategy for each person. It's more about making subtle adjustments based on what you know about them. You might tweak your messaging, the channels you use, or even how often you reach out. So, for instance, if you know a prospect is heavily active on LinkedIn, you might prioritize connecting with them there instead of relying solely on email.
That makes sense. And I remember the book mentioning something about the smartphone dilution frenzy. How does that fit into personalization?
Oh, that's a crucial point. People are just bombarded with emails and messages on their phones these days. So you really need to make yours stand out. Personalization isn't just about addressing someone by name. It's about crafting messages that are relevant and easy to digest on a small screen. Think concise subject lines, bullet points, a clear call to action.
So it's about respecting their time and attention, making it easy for them to understand why they should care about what you have to offer. Okay, so beyond those individual tactics, what are some bigger picture strategies for finding and connecting with high quality prospects?
Well, the book has this really fascinating concept called hugging your competitors' customers. It suggests engaging with people who are already buying a similar product or service from someone else.
Wait, isn't that a bit aggressive? I mean, why would we focus on those who are already someone else's customer?
It's not about being aggressive, it's about recognizing an opportunity. These prospects already understand the value proposition because they're already experiencing it. You don't have to spend as much time educating them on the basics.
I see what you mean. They've already bought into the concept.
Right.
So it's more about positioning yourself as a viable alternative, maybe even a better one.
Exactly. And the book also emphasizes the importance of leveraging those niche groups and communities where your ideal prospects are already gathered. Think industry associations, professional organizations, online forums. The book even playfully calls them secret societies.
Secret societies. That sounds kind of intriguing.
Yeah, it's just a fun way of emphasizing how valuable these groups can be. They provide this concentrated pool of potential customers who are already interested in your field.
Right. It's about going where your prospects are instead of trying to reach them through generic channels. You're more likely to find those qualified leads in a targeted environment like that.
Absolutely. And speaking of targeted, don't underestimate the potential of your own network. Sometimes the best leads are the ones you've already had. Reach out to old customers who may have fallen off the radar. Or, simply make it a habit to ask your current happy customers for referrals.
Right. The power of word-of-mouth marketing. It's amazing how effective a personal recommendation can be, especially in our digital age where people are just bombarded with so much information.
You're right. A referral from a trusted source really cuts through the noise. It instantly builds credibility. The book even suggests making it a standard practice to ask for referrals whenever a customer expresses satisfaction. Capitalize on those moments when they're most likely to sing your praises.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we've talked about offline strategies, but what about online prospecting? How can we leverage the vast world of the internet to find and connect with potential customers?
Well, the book dives into the power of search engines. And it's not just about finding basic contact information. Use search engines strategically to gain insights into a prospect's business, their challenges, and their goals.
So it's about doing your research and being prepared to offer value right from that very first interaction. You want to show them that you understand their needs and you have solutions, not just a generic sales pitch.
Exactly. And speaking of first interactions, let's talk about making a strong impression right out of the gate. A common mistake that salespeople make is focusing too much on themselves and their company.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be a turnoff. Most prospects don't care about your company's history or your impressive list of clients right away. They want to know what's in it for them.
Precisely. Shift the focus to their needs and demonstrate how you can help them achieve their goals. The book suggests using a value statement. That highlights the benefits you offer, not just your features.
Okay, so instead of leading with, we're the leading provider of, we should be saying something like,
think along the lines of prospect name, I'm your name from your company. There's a real push by companies to mention a relevant trend or challenge. How is your company approaching this, and how is it impacting your overall effectiveness?
That's much more engaging. You're piquing their interest and inviting a conversation. Instead of just launching into a sales pitch, it's about offering something of value rather than just trying to sell something.
Exactly. But even with the best approach, you're bound to face some rejection. The key is to be persistent. Don't give up after a single attempt.
Oh, this reminds me of that story you told about your wife converting you into a coffee drinker.
Oh, yeah. It took her years.
Yeah.
But she never gave up.
It's a perfect illustration of the power of persistence. You never know when a prospect might be ready to engage, so consistent follow-up is crucial. But it's also important to be mindful of their time and not become a nuisance.
Oh, absolutely. There's a fine line between persistence and pestering. And the book provides some helpful tips for maximizing your effectiveness without crossing that line. For example, when you're making phone calls, stand up and speak with confidence. It might sound silly, but your energy and enthusiasm will really come through in your voice.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Something about how standing up kind of changes your posture and even your breathing, and it projects a more confident tone.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the importance of using a quality headset. Clear audio makes a big difference in how professional you sound.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if you're calling from a busy or noisy environment. You want to make it easy for them to hear and understand you, not be distracted by background noise. Now, I'm sure as we kind of continue to move further into this prospecting process, there will be moments where we need to evaluate whether a lead is even worth pursuing or not. So how do we make those decisions?
Well, that's a crucial part of the process that a lot of salespeople struggle with. The book highlights 6 key indicators that can help you distinguish between true prospects and just mere suspects. We've touched on a few already, like their willingness to share a decision timeline and disclose proprietary information.
Right. Those are strong signals that a prospect is serious about exploring a potential solution.
Exactly. Another important indicator is their engagement level. Are they asking thoughtful questions? Are they actively contributing to the conversation?
So it's not just about them being receptive to your message, it's also about them actively participating in the dialogue.
Precisely. And pay attention to their body language and tone of voice. Do they seem genuinely interested and enthusiastic? Or are they giving off vibes that they're just humoring you?
Yeah. Those nonverbal cues can be really telling. But what about more concrete factors, like budget and authority? How do you gauge whether a prospect actually has the resources and the power to make a purchase?
Well, that's where some strategic questioning comes in. Don't be afraid to politely inquire about their budget and decision-making process. You might ask something like, to ensure we're on the same page, what's the typical budget allocated for projects like this?
Oh.
Or who else is involved in the decision-making process?
I see how those questions would provide some valuable insights, without being overly pushy or intrusive.
Exactly. And the book offers another piece of advice that I found particularly insightful. Be wary of getting caught up in RFPs or bid quotes that you didn't help to write.
I'm not familiar with those terms. Could you maybe explain what they mean for those who might not be sales professionals?
Sure. An RFP, or request for proposal, is a document that a company issues when they're looking for a specific product or service. It outlines their requirements, and it invites vendors to submit proposals. A bid quote is a formal offer from a vendor that outlines the price and terms for their proposed solution.
Okay, so why would the book advise against responding to RFPs or bid quotes? That you didn't help to shape.
Well, the book argues that if you're coming in late to the party, chances are you're just providing free consulting to help the competition refine their pitch. You're essentially giving them valuable insights into your pricing and approach, which they can then use to their advantage.
That's a great point. It's about being strategic with your time and resources and focusing on opportunities where you have a genuine chance of success.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears for a moment and delve into the psychology of selling. The book emphasizes the importance of confidence, not just in your product or service, but in yourself.
Right. If you don't believe in what you're selling, why should anyone else?
Precisely. And that confidence, or lack thereof, will show through in your interactions with prospects. The book suggests a simple but powerful exercise. Write down the top 5 reasons why customers buy from you and the specific benefits they gain.
So it's about internalizing those reasons and being able to articulate them clearly and persuasively.
Exactly. And here's another helpful tip. Forget about the competition. You can't control what they're doing, so focus on what you can control, your own value proposition and your ability to communicate it effectively.
Right. It's about differentiating yourself based on the unique value you offer, rather than trying to win on price alone. But what about those times when you do encounter price objections? How do you handle those effectively without coming across as defensive or pushy?
Well, the book provides some excellent advice for navigating those tricky situations. First, acknowledge the prospect's concern and validate their perspective. You might say something like, I understand that price is an important consideration, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
So it's about showing empathy and acknowledging their point of view, rather than immediately jumping into a rebuttal.
Exactly. Then reiterate the value you're offering.
Yeah.
And how it aligns with their specific needs and goals. You might say something like, while our solution might seem more expensive up front, it's important to consider the long-term cost savings and productivity gains you'll experience.
So it's about reframing the conversation and highlighting the return on investment they'll receive by choosing your solution.
Precisely. And if they're still hesitant, You can always explore alternative options, like phased implementation or flexible payment terms. But the key is to remain confident in your pricing and be prepared to walk away if the prospect is unwilling to budge.
Right. It's about knowing your worth and not undervaluing your product or service just to close a deal.
Exactly. Now, as we start to wrap up this part of our deep dive into high-profit prospecting, there's one more crucial point the book raises: the need to protect your time.
Right. Time is, as we discussed, a salesperson's most valuable asset. But how do we actually protect it in a world that's constantly demanding our attention?
Well, it starts with recognizing that not all prospects are created equal. The book cautions against the temptation to overservice those who are unlikely to convert.
I can see how that trap is easy to fall into. You want to be helpful and responsive, but you also need to be strategic and prioritize your efforts.
Exactly. And that brings us to the book's concluding message. Yes, you can do it.
It's a call to action, urging salespeople to put these strategies into practice and reap the rewards.
The book emphasizes that prospecting is not a mystery. It's a skill that can be learned and mastered with the right mindset and approach.
It's about embracing the challenge and having the confidence to succeed. But what does that confidence actually look like in practice? How do we cultivate that unshakable belief in ourselves and our ability to close deals?
That's a great question, and one that we'll explore in more detail in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the power of positive self-talk, visualization, and goal setting, as well as discuss specific techniques for handling rejection and building resilience. So stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into high-profit prospecting. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From debunking those myths to segmenting prospects, crafting those killer value statements. But there's one more crucial piece I think we need to explore, and that's the power of mindset.
Yeah, it's really amazing how much our internal beliefs can influence our external results. The book really drives home the point that confidence is everything in sales, especially when it comes to prospecting.
So I'm curious, what's that confidence even look like in action? Is it about having a swagger or using power poses?
Well, it's much deeper than that. It's about genuinely believing in yourself, your product or service, and the value that you bring to the table. The book actually encourages salespeople to ask themselves a really powerful question. Would you buy from yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. It forces you to confront any doubts or insecurities you might have. Like, if you can't honestly answer yes, then it's time to figure out why.
Exactly. Is it a lack of product knowledge? Do you maybe need to brush up on your sales skills? Or maybe there's even a misalignment between your personal values and what you're selling. Once you identify the root cause, you can start addressing it and build that unshakable belief in yourself.
And then that belief is just going to radiate outwards, right?
Right.
Inspiring confidence in your prospects and ultimately leading to more sales. But confidence isn't something you just magically acquire overnight. So how do we cultivate that mindset, especially when faced with rejection, which is kind of inevitable in sales?
Well, one powerful technique the book suggests is positive self-talk. So instead of dwelling on those negative thoughts and doubts, you consciously replace them with positive affirmations. For example, instead of thinking, oh, I'm terrible at cold calling, try, I'm getting better with each call I make.
Okay, so it's about reframing our internal dialogue and focusing on our progress, even if it's just incremental.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of visualization. Take some time each day to visualize yourself, successfully connecting with prospects, having those productive conversations, and closing deals.
Oh, so it's almost like a mental rehearsal for those real-life interactions.
Precisely. And when you do face rejection, and you will, try to view it as a learning opportunity rather than a personal failure. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? And how can I improve my approach next time?
Yeah, that's such a valuable perspective shift. It's about embracing those setbacks as stepping stones on the path to success. But how do we stay motivated and keep our energy levels high when we're kind of facing those constant challenges?
Well, that's where goal setting comes in. The book encourages salespeople to set really clear, specific, and achievable goals. They give them something to strive for. And don't just focus on outcome goals like hitting a certain sales target. Set process goals too, like making a certain number of calls each day, or sending out a specific number of personalized emails.
Oh, that's a great point. By focusing on the actions that we can control, we can build momentum and stay motivated, even when the results aren't immediately apparent.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate your wins, no matter how small they may seem. Acknowledge your progress, reward yourself for your efforts, and keep that positive energy flowing.
Yeah, it's about recognizing and appreciating those milestones along the way,
Yeah.
which can really fuel our motivation for the journey ahead. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into high profit prospecting, I want to circle back to something that you mentioned earlier, that there's really no single right way to prospect.
You got it. That's one of the key takeaways. It's about finding what works best for you, your industry, and your target market. The book really encourages experimentation and adaptation.
So we need to be willing to try new things, track our results, and refine our approach over time.
Yeah, be a lifelong learner, constantly seeking ways to improve your skills. And remember that prospecting is an art, not a science.
It's about combining strategy with creativity, persistence with adaptability,
Hmm,
and confidence with a genuine desire to help others.
that's it. Building relationships, providing value, and ultimately making a positive impact on the world.
Well, there you have it. We've reached the end of our deep dive into high profit prospecting. Hopefully, you're feeling inspired and equipped to take your prospecting to the next level. Remember, success is out there waiting for you. Go get it.
And if you're eager to delve even deeper into that wealth of strategies and insights we've discussed, be sure to check out High Profit Prospecting by Mark Hunter. It's a treasure trove of wisdom that can really transform your approach to prospecting and help you achieve those high profit results you're after. Happy hunting.
Hey, if you made it to the end of the video, thanks so much for listening. If you want to get the book for yourself, use the link in the description. If you're looking to level up your income, schedule a one-on-one with me to see if what I do might be right for you. Remember, like if you like the content and share so we can all become more book buff and life smart.